18 years ago, abandoned with just $20, my son's shocking words exposed my parents' betrayal. David wiped the grease from his hands, staring at the worn-out car engine in front of him, the familiar sense of motor oil swirling in the air. His garage was full of tools, each one a testament to the hard work instilled in him by his single mother, who fought against life's tidal waves to provide for him. The memory of her unwavering spirit served as his guiding principle. Every bolt he tightened echoed his mother's lessons on integrity, each engine he fixed a reminder of the life he clawed his way from, abandoned at birth with nothing but $20. But that world now rattled under the fragility of his son's ambitions. "Dad, I want to go to an Ivy League," Alex said, practically beaming, injecting brightness into David's otherwise dim evening. The words hung in the air like a shocking detonation, shattering the routine he'd built around hard work and safety. He watched his 18-year-old son, the glow of possibility radiating from him. David's mind whirled with conflicting emotions: pride, fear, and an undeniable hesitation. "A Ivy League?" David echoed hesitantly, feeling a knot tighten in his stomach. The ambition poured from Alex, bright and ambitious, a world so different from his own where he had fought tooth and nail just to survive. How could he possibly consider any academic dreams while he still felt every vestige of inadequacy churning beneath his surface? A deep breath escaped David, mingling with the musty odor of the garage. Hell, was he sabotaging Alex's dreams with his own fears? The weight of his past crept in like a shadow he could never quite escape. Memories of rejection from his family surged forth, the betrayal of a mother and father who turned their backs on him. He could hardly give voice to this new legacy. Alex longed for a legacy tarnished by the very abandonment David had vowed to protect him from. As he turned to collect himself, a glimmer caught his eye from a dusty toolbox in the corner. What had once been forgotten had now become a beacon. Stumbling upon an old letter from his estranged family's attorney, he hesitated. Each heartbeat echoed loudly in his ears as he unfolded its brittle paper. Inheritance? Family legacy? The hidden truths knocked against the walls of his mind, mingling with the longing for acceptance and the white-hot anger at the parents who had left him behind. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The door to an unknown future creaked open in his mind. Could he confront the legacy that had been denied him, or would he allow the fears rooted in his past to smother Alex's aspirations? Raw emotions coiled tightly in his chest, threatening to explode. He pictured Alex at that Ivy League, untainted by the pain of betrayal David felt. His son's bright future could be the very thing to break the cycle, but at what cost? David stood at the cusp of a reckoning, feeling the ancient pull of unhealed wounds tugging at him. Tomorrow the mansion awaited, the mansion that seemed to materialize from every one of his nightmares, a place he had never seen but had always felt. Could he face the family that had shattered him to find the solace that his heart so desperately craved, or was he destined to recreate the very pain he yearned to escape? Anguish coursed through him as he wrestled with the ghosts of his past, the future seemingly slipping further from his grasp. David clenched the letter tightly, pulse quickening as he wrestled with the decision that lay before him. The remnants of his family history were rotting in his grasp, but a flicker of opportunity ignited inside him an irresistible call to confront the demons that had haunted him for far too long. Yet, shadows of self-doubt clouded that flicker. If he ventured into his family's world again, was he inviting chaos or seeking closure? He leaned against the car, the heat of the engine radiating like the tumult within him. Alex's face flashed before him, equal parts determination and innocence. Did he want to support his son's dreams, or was he merely projecting his own unresolved struggles? Each engine revved outside reverberated through the garage, an undercurrent of engines roaring with ambition, a stark contrast to David's internal battle. The next morning arrived wrapped in a heavy fog, as if the world itself was hesitant to reveal its truths. As he drove toward the mansion, the vastness of the trees lining the road felt claustrophobic, each shadow seemed potent with past memories, mocking him for daring to hope. Could he truly face those who had disregarded his worth as a child? The bittersweet amalgam of curiosity and dread lodged painfully in his throat. Upon arrival, the mansion loomed like a formidable fortress, a mouthpiece of the betrayal that had defined him. He took a moment to steady himself, fingers tightening around the steering wheel as he fought against every instinct that told him to turn around. This was not just about confronting them, it was about shattering the chains of his past to forge a pathway for Alex, a future unfettered by the weight of their legacy. He walked up the sprawling, stone steps, each footfall echoing his internal mantra, "I am not my past." When he knocked, the sound resonated loudly in his ears, a signal of his commitment to change. Seconds passed, and the door creaked open. The sight that greeted him was as opulent as he had imagined, yet it did little to soothe the remnants of his anxiety. Standing before him was his mother, an echo of the past he had done battle with in his mind. They locked eyes, a constellation of unresolved hurt swirling between them. Her expression morphed from surprise to a cautious recognition, and his heart raced with every potential response running through him. A lifetime of questions flooded his thoughts. Why had she left him? Did she even care? "David," she began, but he interrupted her, resolute. "It's time we talked." The conversation spiraled into a tempest of words, old wounds pulled to the surface, and revelations untangled like long-ignored threads. Each exchange carried the weight of years lost, unspoken regrets mingling with accusations. As they navigated the treacherous territory of their shared history, the fear that had hardened David's heart began to crack. He realized that confronting his parents was not merely for revenge or closure, it was an opportunity for personal growth and to redefine himself beyond their shadows. Emerging from the confrontation, David was drenched in uncertainty but also emboldened. With every moment he reclaimed, he felt a little more ready to embrace his own strengths, perhaps even help Alex, not just to reach for the Ivy League, but to discover the courage not to be bound by their past. But as he returned home, triumph tinged with unresolved tension, one question echoed louder than the rest: could he finally break away from the chains of his past while building a future for Alex? The realization rippled through him: the legacy was not set in stone, it was malleable, existing in his hands. Yet even as he fostered newfound hope, a looming revelation awaited as he stumbled once more on the letter hidden in that dusty toolbox. The specifics it contained threatened to reshape everything he thought he knew about his family's legacy. David's skin prickled with anticipation, for whatever had been left unsaid could become the turning point in redefining not just his identity but Alex's future as well. What other hidden truths might he uncover? As David settled back into the comforting silence of his home, the air weighed heavily with unanswered questions. He clutched the letter tightly, its crinkled edges pressing into his palm, urging him to uncover its contents. The emotionally charged confrontation with his mother had awakened dormant feelings, but this letter held potential answers that could either liberate or further ensnare him. What if it contained more than just legacy? What if it revealed the truth behind his family's choices? He directed his focus to the bedroom, its dim light casting long shadows across the walls, where trace remnants of his old life remained. He missed Alex's laughter echoing through the house, the fuel that had kept him striving for change. Questions flared in his mind, igniting a fire of ambition and fear. Would unveiling these truths bring him any closer to his son, or would it spell disaster? With deliberate pacing, he opened the letter. At first, the text was a blur, ink smeared by time, words laden with meaning. David tuned into the familiar dance of anxiety and determination. As he read the first few lines, the facade of safety he built trembled. The letter detailed a hidden agreement made by his parents, a pact that had dictated not only their lives but also his own. A mere whisper of financial security had come at a cost that he had yet to fully understand. Disentangling the implications of the letter felt like peeling back thick layers of protective skin, exposing him to potential wounds. Each revelation felt like a lifeline. At the same time, it threatened to pull him deeper into a well of resentment. The power dynamics that had shaped his childhood were starkly illuminated. For all those years, he had convinced himself that their actions stemmed from neglect, when in reality, there was a calculated element that bordered on betrayal. What gnawed at him though, was the realization that Alex could unknowingly be ensnared in a similar web. David's resolve to break the cycle strengthened. This meant he needed to harness this newfound knowledge not only for himself, but to recognize the patterns that could emerge in his son's life. Time continued to slip through his fingers as he read and reread the letter, each line reverberating with increasing significance. He stood at the crossroads of his past and present, one foot anchored in the determination to rise above, the other poised precariously upon the fears of repetition. It dawned on him that there lay hidden within the letter not just the betrayal of family, but also the roots of power he could reclaim. A thought crossed his mind: he was more than the mere byproduct of his parents' decisions. He had the agency to redefine the legacy they left behind. The realization sparked hope, although conflict still simmered. Could he approach the next chapter not just as the wounded child but as the author of his own story? As he prepared to share everything with Alex, knowing that these truths should be laid bare, another thought crept in: what would his son think of this newfound knowledge? Would it complicate their relationship further, or could it fortify the bond they shared? The fear of damaging that connection held its grip, but the desire to ensure Alex's future became overwhelming. With resolve blooming in his heart, David decided it was time to meet the shadows head-on. He sensed an urgency. Each revelation came with the responsibility to confront those who drowned in their roles of authority. He would organize a plan to approach his parents for a second reckoning. The pivotal moment lay before him, but as he contemplated the upcoming confrontation, his phone chimed with a new notification. It was a message from Alex that sent a shiver down his spine. "Dad, can we talk? I found something weird about our family history." David's heart raced. What had Alex discovered? Had the shadows drawn him away from the light? The lines of their shared history were becoming more intricate, freighted with burdens they had not yet anticipated. The decision loomed in front of David: he had to act quickly to prevent the past from swallowing Alex whole. David took a deep breath, acutely aware of the weight of Alex's message. The starkness of the words hung in the air, heavy with implications he could scarcely fathom. He paced the room, a whirlwind of emotions colliding within him: fear, dread, and a flicker of hope ignited by the thought of finally confronting the ghost of family secrets. He typed hesitantly, fingers hovering over the screen as he considered how to approach this. "What did you find?" The message rattled through the emptiness of the house as he waited for a reply. Each passing second felt like an eternity, and with every beat of his heart, the uneasy knowledge that his son was venturing into unfamiliar territory gnawed at him. Moments later, the phone chimed. "I found some old documents, Dad. They mentioned something about our family being in debt and a deal your parents made. It sounds bad. Can we talk?" A pang of anxiety swelled in his chest. The blurred lines between his past and Alex's future broke through the facade he clung to. Why had he thought this would remain buried? The letter gripping his hand suddenly felt like both a lifeline and a noose, a reminder of all the entanglements he was endeavoring to shield Alex from. David sank onto the couch, his thoughts racing. The realization that Alex was on the cusp of uncovering the same patterns he desperately wanted to avoid sent waves of determination coursing through him. He must approach this conversation with honesty. He needed Alex to understand what was at stake, not just for himself, but for the legacy he hoped to craft differently. Stripping away the layers of trepidation, David quickly devised a plan. He would meet Alex at their favorite cafe, a place that resonated with shared memories, warmth and laughter, where unlike their home, shadows couldn't linger too long. He needed the room's comfort, a space where he could present the truths weaving through their lineage without the icy weight of family betrayal choking the air. "Let's meet in an hour," he replied. His heart raced in rhythm with his thoughts, grappling with how to lay this groundwork adequately. What if Alex took the information the wrong way? What if he became overwhelmed, retreating into anger rather than seeking understanding? As he prepared to leave, a sense of urgency stirred deep within. David gazed at the letter one more time, then tucked it into his jacket pocket alongside his business card. He was heading into uncharted waters, not just with Alex, but with his parents looming closer in his mind as well. The reckoning he had postponed seemed more urgent now, as if the past was meticulously reappearing to rerun its chapters. Pulling up to the cafe, he noticed Alex sitting at a table near the window. The boy's brows knitted together, a reflection of uncertainty but also of curiosity. David's resolve hardened. He was not just there to defend a legacy but to forge an alliance with his son, ensuring that together they would escape the scaffolding of betrayal his family had woven around them. "Hey, buddy," David greeted, aiming for nonchalance that whispered of confidence. Alex's expression shifted from concern to something more complex as he gestured for his father to sit. "Dad, what's going on?" The moment sprang forth with a mix of emotional tension and an undeniable hunger for truth. David took a steadying breath. The time had come to dismantle the barriers, not for his own sake, but for Alex's future, their future. Each word fired back and forth between them, layers of understanding unfurling like fragile petals revealing an intricate flower. He recognized, in the midst of this exchange, that the bond they shared hinged on honesty, risking vulnerability for the sake of clarity. But just as the depth of their conversation began to unfold, David's phone vibrated insistently on the table, breaking the fragile spell. He glanced down to see a message from his father, echoing a sense of importance that made his stomach drop. "David, we need to discuss what I promised you. Today." Panic flared red-hot inside him. The confrontation he had envisioned with Alex now morphed into something perilous, tinged with intimidation. Would he betray his son's trust in the name of familial loyalty? The weight of history pressed down, challenging him to choose between the past that had haunted him and the future he hoped to build. "Are you okay?" Alex's voice broke through the noise, eyes searching his for answers. In that moment, David felt the tide of inevitability wash over him. "We need to talk." What had begun as an exploration of their history had transformed into a pivotal moment that could tip the scales of their lives. But would he have the strength to face what lay ahead with Alex beside him? The suffocating grip of secrets and betrayal loomed large. As they shared a determined gaze, David knew the day of reckoning approached, and it was time to confront the tangled truths of their family. The moment was now. David's breath hung heavy in the cafe, a visceral reminder of the gravity of the moment. He locked eyes with Alex, whose youthful resolve animated the air between them. The urgency of the situation coursed through him, the weight of generational secrets, loyalties tested, and the fear of loss. The world seemed to condense to this one pivotal point in time. "You found some documents?" David managed, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. The conversation had shifted, the stakes elevated higher than he had anticipated. Alex nodded, eyes widening with curiosity and concern. "Yeah. It looks like there were debts they didn't want anyone to know about. It's tied to something bigger, Dad." "What deal did they make?" He leaned in, hungry for answers. David felt the edges of his resolve crumple under the pressure. "It's complicated. My parents, they made decisions that impacted us. But they did it to protect, or so they thought." He could feel Alex's disappointment radiating from across the table, the unspoken question hanging in the air, protect whom? He summoned the words he'd rehearsed in his mind, but now they felt inadequate. "You deserve to know the whole story. We're not just bound by blood but by choices good and bad." Silence stretched between them, punctuated by the steady rhythm of coffee cups clinking nearby. David could see Alex grappling with the betrayal, wrestling with confusion and anger that mirrored his own. "Did you know?" Alex accused quietly, a hint of betrayal in his tone. David's heart sank. "I thought I could shield you from it all. I thought you wouldn't have to carry that weight." The shame of his own decisions crackled in the air, each word painfully extracted from the depths of his own history. Alex scoffed, the young man's frustration palpable. "By hiding it, you've carried all of this alone. Now it's my turn to deal with it?" David's patience frayed. "It's not about you bearing the burden, it's about us confronting it together. You're my son, I don't want this to repeat. I want you to be free." "Free?" Alex's voice was a mix of disbelief and anger. "You think I'm any closer to freedom when I'm finding out that the generations before me were lying?" Sorrow tugged at David's core. He could feel the walls they had built crumbling, letting chaos in. His instincts urged him to placate Alex's fury, but he understood this was not the moment for it. The real task was to cut through the anger and reach the root of their connection. "Can we just take a breath?" David suggested, lowering his tone. "I didn't know how to tell you. And it's still hard to grasp myself. But we can decide our path from here. This is about the future, not the past." "What future?" Alex challenged, further anger punctuating his question. "One where we're going to have to deal with the same family mistakes." Yes, the dread washed over David anew, but clarity sparked behind the heaviness. Exactly. The mistakes are not the end of the road. We can rewrite the narrative together. Alex's expression shifted, a flicker of thoughtfulness igniting within him. "What do you mean?" David leaned forward, his pulse quickening. "It means we can embrace honesty, set new standards, we can be proactive. I don't want you to have my past as your blueprint. We can create something new." As the conversation shifted from accusation toward the horizon stretching ahead, David sensed the animosity dissipating. Hope flickered like a candle flame, dim yet persistent. Yet, just as the tension began to ease, his phone vibrated again, the familiar name on the screen igniting dread once more. "David, it's time to talk. Is it about your parents?" Alex's voice cut through, and David's chest tightened. He had defended his father all his life, and now, standing in a cafe with his son, the rift was ever more profound. "I need to take this," he murmured, feeling the weight of impending confrontation pressing upon him. As he prepared to answer, he caught a glimpse of Alex's inquisitive eyes. The question now shifted from familial loyalty to the harsh truths that could splinter their fragile understanding. Returning the call would draw him back to his past, chain him to expectations, and place him in direct conflict with the legacy he had hoped to transcend. He stood at a crossroads with Alex watching, both were faced with the shadows of the past. But did dropping the call mean losing Alex's trust again? "Dad, what's going on?" Alex's voice pushed him back from the brink of indecision. The moment hung thick with tension, weaving their fates as David prepared to confront not just his father, but his legacy too. Would he have the courage to dismantle what remained of those secrets? Nothing good can come from hesitation, he thought, as he responded to the call. David's hand trembled slightly as he accepted the call, bringing the phone to his ear. His father's voice was as authoritative and steady as he remembered, a tone that had always commanded respect but now felt decidedly foreign, a leaden weight against his ear. "David," his father began, the tone unmistakably serious. "We need to discuss what you've been digging into. You need to understand the repercussions of that." Each word sent a ripple of resentment coursing through him. The man on the other end hadn't changed. Why should he have expected empathy now? "I don't think it's wise to sweep it under the rug any longer. Alex and I deserve the truth." There was a pause, then his father sighed heavily, as if the weight of years pressed down on him through the phone lines. "There's a reason we kept things from you, to protect the family." "Protect it from what?" David challenged, crossing his arms in a defensive posture. The cafe around him blurred momentarily, all he could focus on was his father's unyielding legacy. "From the truth? Or from the consequences of your actions? Do you really want to open that Pandora's box? You have a son now." His father's voice softened, but there was a sharp edge beneath it, reminding David who was still in control. "I have my own son to think about now," he replied, the ferocity in his voice amplifying his resolve. "These secrets won't protect him, they'll only ensnare him with the same shackles we wore." The tension in David's shoulders eased slightly as he absorbed the truth of his words. Yes, he was no longer the boy sitting silently while his father cast shadows on their family history. He felt a growing sense of agency, a realization that this was not just a familial conversation but an opportunity for transformation. He glanced at Alex, sitting in silence, whose waiting gaze both encouraged and intimidated him. "You've always had a knack for overreacting," his father countered, a defensive tone creeping back in. Make sure you're not throwing everything away for a misguided sense of righteousness. Is that what this is for you? David asked, a new determination surging through him. Keeping the status quo at all costs? That's not fair. You don't understand the pressures. No, I don't, David interrupted, his conviction solidifying. What I do know is that I cannot stand by while the past dictates the future. I won't let mistakes define us anymore. His father's silence felt deafening, each second stretching, giving David space to wrestle with his past, the memories of feeling small in his father's towering presence, the aching desire for validation that now felt hollow. Listen. I'll do what I must to protect my family, and that includes preparing Alex for whatever's to come, he added, feeling the weight of his words settle. After a tense pause, his father finally relented. Very well, but if you pursue this, understand that there will be consequences. I hope you're ready to face them. The call ended abruptly, leaving David with a mix of adrenaline and clarity. Suddenly, the cafe noises seemed to slide into the background as he turned to Alex. His son's expression ranged from concern to hope. Dad, what did he say? Alex's voice held a cautious urgency. David took a deep breath, the rhythm of his heart a marching call to action. He confirms what we suspected, but he implies that he's ready to fight back. What does that mean for us? Alex questioned, urgency mingling with a fierce curiosity. It means, David hesitated, weighing the forthcoming words with significance, that we may need to prepare for blowback. But it's also our chance to redefine this narrative together. Just as a flicker of optimism began to light Alex's features, the phone buzzed in David's pocket again. The display revealed an unfamiliar number. A new player entered this intricate game of legacy. Another call, he muttered anxiously, glancing at Alex, whose eyes mirrored his rising apprehension. Are you going to answer? For a moment, David felt trapped by the heavy past and the uncertain future. But he also felt a burgeoning sense of control. A stark difference from his usual passivity. I have to figure out what's next for us. This could change everything. As he hit the button to answer, a pressing question hung heavily around them. Would this new revelation lead them closer to the truth or only deepen the divide? David's heart raced as he answered the call, an unfamiliar voice greeting him on the other end. Hello, is this David? The tone was brisk and authoritative, cutting through the quiet trepidation that clung to the cafe's atmosphere. Yes, this is he, David responded, curiosity piqued. As he listened, the name echoed in his mind like a whisper of fate, a distant relative whose existence hinted at more secrets buried within the family tree. I have information regarding your family's past that I believe you should know, the voice continued, unwavering. We need to meet in person. There are matters that cannot be discussed over the phone. The urgency in the caller's tone struck David. He exchanged glances with Alex, whose brow furrowed in concern. The gravity of the situation loomed, and David felt the familiar tension gripping his chest. Where would you like to meet? David asked, suppressing the urge to question the nature of the information right then and there. He preferred to confront these secrets face to face, where he could establish a measure of control. Let's say, the Riverside Cafe. Tomorrow at 3, the voice specified before abruptly ending the call. David placed the phone down, his mind swirling with thoughts. What could this person possibly know? The weight of his father's warning seeped back into his consciousness. Consequences loomed over him like a storm cloud. Who was that? Alex asked cautiously. David struggled to contain his tumultuous thoughts, his voice barely above a whisper. Someone who claims to know more about our family's past. The statement hung between them, an unspoken acknowledgement that both excited and terrified him. It was a chance for resolutions, but also potential fallout. What if it's a trap, Dad? Alex's apprehension mirrored David's own inner conflict. It might be, but we can't back down now. We need answers, David replied, trying to instill confidence in his son. Courage surged within him. He was no longer the timid child under his father's thumb but a man determined to carve out a path forward. By the time the morning of the meeting arrived, David found himself pacing the small living room, his mind a jumble of what-ifs. Each step reinforced his conviction: he was poised to confront the legacy that sought to control him. He worried about Alex, sensing the weight of responsibility shifting from one generation to the next. "Are you sure about this, Dad?" Alex asked, his youthful caution manifesting in his furrowed brow. "Absolutely," David affirmed, his voice steadying. "There's no turning back. We have to change our narrative." Alex nodded, yet uncertainty still lingered in his eyes. David's heart squeezed as he wished to alleviate his son's concerns. He was committed to ensuring Alex's future would be forged on honesty, not shadows of the past. At Riverside Cafe, David arrived punctually, scanning the room for the stranger who bore critical information. The cafe bustled with life, clinking cutlery, and hushed conversations contrasting sharply with the tension coiling within him. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Just as doubt began to creep in, a figure entered, a middle-aged man whose face exhibited a mix of curiosity and somber resignation. Their eyes locked, and David approached, each step a calculated extraction from fear. "David?" the man asked, extending a hand. "I'm Thomas." As they shook hands, David felt a mix of anticipation and dread, a strange cocktail of emotions brewing within him. The upcoming revelations might unveil truths he wasn't ready to face, yet he had already committed to this journey. He owed it to himself and to Alex to confront the realities of their family. "Thank you for coming," Thomas began, the weight of unshared histories visible in his eyes. "It's important we get straight to the point. Your family has secrets, and they matter more than you might think." As Thomas began to speak, each word began to unravel the threads of their tangled past, a path David hadn't anticipated, leading to consequences far beyond his control. Would David emerge enlightened, or shattered by the truth that lay beneath the surface? David leaned forward slightly, acutely aware of the growing tension between him and Thomas. The revelation of family secrets loomed over him like a specter, whispering the possibility that the comfortable illusions of his life might be stripped away. Just seconds into the conversation, he recognized the need to steel himself for whatever twisted truths Thomas was prepared to share. "Your family's past is deeply intertwined with events long forgotten," Thomas continued, his voice low but steady. "It has affected not just your family, but branches far beyond it. I can assure you, every piece of information is critical." While he tried to maintain composure, David felt the layers of his identity being scrutinized. Who was he in relation to these secrets? Was he simply a bystander to a history that had dictated his family's choices? As if reading his thoughts, Thomas gestured toward the door of the cafe, the world outside them brimming with life and yet disconnected from their profound conversation. "What do you mean? What happened?" David asked, his voice steely, yet betraying a sense of urgency. He needed clarity, but he also needed to be prepared. Thomas took a deep breath, the kind that signaled he was about to unveil something that would irrevocably alter the room's atmosphere. "Your parents made decisions that influenced your childhood, your upbringing, and even your son's future. It all stems from a choice your father made years ago." As David listened, a sense of foreboding swelled within him. He had grown up with a father whose harsh lessons had been a staple of his development. Each lesson had shaped David into the man he was, but if those lessons were based on lies or subterfuge, who had he truly become? Forcing himself to focus on Thomas's words, David clenched the edge of the table, anchoring himself in the surface of reality. "What choice are you talking about?" Thomas shuffled the papers in front of him and looked intently at David. "Your father abandoned his own family, a brother, a sister. It was a decision driven by despair and, ultimately, greed, to grasp at a life he felt he deserved. The ramifications of that choice still ripple through your family tree today." A knot formed in David's throat. The familial ties he had always taken for granted now seemed tethered to a fraying rope, and the very ground beneath him felt unstable. "Why are you telling me this now? What did you expect me to do with this information?" "Because it's time to confront the legacy," Thomas urged, his expression turning earnest. "You have a chance to break free. You can reshape your narrative, redefine your family's future, and ensure Alex grows up in a truth-filled environment. It's a difficult path, but one worth taking." David's mind raced through all the implications of Thomas's message. The necessity to disclose painful truths to Alex was undeniable, but the thought held its own weight of emotional turmoil. He couldn't let his child inherit ignorance or denial. He had to be the father Alex deserved, a man who navigated life with honesty. Each pulse of determination grew stronger within him. He would not let fear obscure the path toward understanding and healing. "What do I need to do?" he asked, his voice tinged with both trepidation and burgeoning resolve. "First, you'll need to confront your father. He still lives, and he may hold the keys to his own remnants of truth," Thomas instructed. It was then that David felt the profound impact of the challenge ahead. Confronting his father about his choices would demand every ounce of courage he could muster, as the encounter would force him to venture back into a past he had almost managed to forget. With adrenaline pooling in his veins, David realized he stood on a precipice. Every secret revealed could ultimately reshape everything he thought he knew about his bloodline and, more importantly, about himself. "Are you ready to face the past?" Thomas asked, his eyes glistening with a mixture of challenge and understanding. The question hung heavily in the air, prompting David to contemplate not just the revelation of family secrets, but the man he had become through the shadows of his upbringing. Was he prepared for the confrontation? Perhaps this was the moment to embrace the unfamiliar, reforge his identity, and redefine what family meant beyond bloodlines. "I will," David said firmly, his breath steadying. But as he stood on the brink of discovery, a new realization dawned: the deeper the roots he unearthed, the less clear-cut his path would be, possibly leading to an unanticipated reckoning with his father. That shrouded figure waiting in the shadows was not just his past but a reflection of a battle still to be fought. The reply echoed in his mind, echoing a new path forward, a confrontation not just with his past but with the values he would embody henceforth. As David and Thomas finalized the next steps, a question loomed, relentless and insistent: what if, when he confronted his father, the truth revealed depths of betrayal he could scarcely fathom? David sat in silent reflection as he exited the cafe, the weight of his family's history pressing heavily on his chest. The bustling streets outside felt foreign to him now, mere distractions from the internal chaos that had begun to swirl within. Already, he sensed the disparate sides of himself grating against one another: a son wanting answers, a father seeking protection for his child, and a man who craved clarity amidst darkness. Pacing through the throngs of people, he marveled at their apparent ease. Did they carry silent burdens as he did, or were they blissfully unaware of the truths lurking in their own bloodlines? Anxiety twisted in his stomach as he reminded himself that answers lay ahead, yet did that knowledge come with new burdens of its own? He needed a strategy. Confronting his father was not merely about unearthing forgotten truths, it was about disassembling the identity David had constructed around those very illusions. What if the confrontation did not lead to healing, but instead to a chasm of unbridgeable distance between them? He tried to focus on the necessity of the conversation for Alex's sake. Truths he refused to confront would become the lies Alex would inherit. He wrestled with the image of his son growing up under a shadow of deception, manipulated by the very legacy David now had in his hands to reshape. Sitting on a park bench, David pulled out his phone. The screen seemed to pulse with possibilities as he navigated through contacts, stopping at his father's number. It was a lifeline and a noose all at once. He had to gain composure first. He didn't want to approach this confrontation from a place of anger or desperation. After a few deep breaths, he opened a new email draft, forcing himself to jot down the mixed emotions swirling in his mind. He wrote about the apprehension of confronting someone he had idolized for so long, about the hope that perhaps honesty could mend old wounds. But with each word typed, he felt the tether to his childhood slipping. Each revelation about his father's past now felt like a sword thrust, cutting through the fabric of his memories. Were the lessons David had learned from him merely hollow mantras built on fragile foundations? He halted, the cursor blinking at him as he sensed uncertainty within himself. Questions flooded his mind. If he challenged his father, who would he become? Would revealing his father's failures also mean exposing vulnerabilities of his own? A deep sense of resolve surged within him as he hit send. He would initiate this dialogue not to lay blame but to seek understanding. Whatever secrets lay buried deserved air, not to suffocate under layers of denial. As David stood from the bench, watching the leaves tremble in the wind, he felt something shift. He was no longer just a son seeking closure, he was a father committed to altering a cycle of lies. Yet, the path ahead was inevitably daunting. Flashes of potential confrontation with his father replayed in his mind, the anxiety electrifying his thoughts. Each step echoed with the rhythmic drumbeat of resolve, a mantra repeating in his heart: confrontation, understanding, healing. But as he prepared to set plans in motion, he had to consider, could he withstand whatever truths unveiled the man who had shaped his very existence? A chill ran down his spine as he turned toward home. Though cloaked in determination, he couldn't silence the nagging doubt. If confronting his father unearthed a betrayal deeper than anticipated, would he still stand firm? Just then, a text buzzed on his phone. As David looked down, the words stared back at him. "Dad, can we talk? I found something out about family." An icy rush of foreboding coursed through him. What revelation did Alex stumble upon? The urge to shield his son, yet also the need to explore the ties binding them both to a legacy of secrets, churned within. The impending storm was growing, threatening to expose more than just his father's past. It might reveal untold depths of his own. David stood in the doorway of his home, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the floor. The moment of truth loomed ahead. He would finally confront his father not only about the legacy of lies but also about the burden he did not want Alex to inherit. The world outside was just beginning to dim, and with it, the clarity of his decision illuminated his heart. He had spent sleepless nights contemplating the call with Thomas and the knowledge it had brought to light. The weight of his father's betrayal and the intricacies of family history felt more like a noose tightening around his throat with each passing hour. But he was resolute. No matter the outcome, he needed to break the cycle of silence that had haunted his family for generations. As he gathered his courage to make the call, he reflected on how far he had come since the moment he learned of Alex's Ivy League dream. Just weeks ago, he had been a man defined by fear and inadequacy, wrestling with shadows of abandonment. But each step he took toward confronting those shadows forged a new resilience within him. The confrontation had become more than a family reckoning, it was a transformational self-discovery rooted in the desire for honesty, a future unbound by past treachery. With determination, he dialed his father's number. When the call connected, his father's tone was brisk but carried an underlying tension, signaling he sensed the gravity of this conversation. "David, it's been a while. What's on your mind?" "I can't keep sidelining the truth any longer," David declared, his voice steady. "We need to talk about our family's past, the decisions that have shaped us and the secrets we've buried." There was a heavy pause. "What do you mean?" His father's incredulous tone only intensified the nerves tangling within David. But he pressed on, driven by a newfound sense of purpose. "I know about the choices you made, about the family you left behind. You infused a lie into my life, and I won't let it define my son's future too." Each word resonated with clarity, bolstered by the knowledge he had gained over the past few days. He was no longer that abandoned child from his past, he was a father aiming to shield his son from the same anguish he endured. "David, you don't understand everything," his father replied, indignation rising. "Those choices were made for our survival." Survival? Or selfishness? David felt a surge of adrenaline rush through him. "You left a legacy of shame. I won't let Alex carry that weight, and you shouldn't either. I'm here to reclaim our narrative. Together, we can break this cycle." Silence stretched between them as David caught his breath. He watched shadows dance along the walls, feeling the uncertainty mingle with a profound sense of conviction. "I am reclaiming my identity not merely as your son, but as a man for my own family. I'll no longer accept the shadows of your past as my destiny." The call ended abruptly, leaving David with a mixture of relief and disbelief. He had done it, confronted the very source of his pain. The phone trembled slightly in his hand as the reality of his actions settled in. Truth would pave the way forward, both for Alex and for himself, allowing him to carve out a new meaning from the fragmented history he inherited. As he turned away from the window, he spotted Alex walking through the door, a hint of worry etched on his youthful features. "Dad?" David took a deep breath, a sense of calm washing over him. Now was the moment to share, to sculpt the new foundation on which they would build their legacy. "We need to talk," he said, gesturing for Alex to sit. "About what?" Alex's tone was apprehensive but curious. "About everything, the family history, the truths that need to emerge. I want us to share this journey together. The past doesn't have to define you, you can shape your own future." As they sat down, David outlined everything: his confrontation with his father, the startling revelations, and the resolve to face their shared history. The words flowed out, colored with both emotion and a newfound certainty. Each moment spent speaking felt liberating. The shackles of secrecy began to loosen their grip on his spirit. Alex listened intently, his initial anxiety transforming into intrigue. "Wow. So you're saying it's up to us to rewrite our story?" "Exactly. We are not bound to it." David smiled, warmth radiating between them. "You have a bright future ahead. Let us make sure it's crafted with truth, not the shadows of betrayal." Alex's eyes sparked with understanding. "So I can go for that Ivy League after all? I won't be burdened by what your family did." "Not if we choose to walk forward together, discussing and dismantling these burdens." David felt a swell of pride surge within him. At that moment, he saw not just the growth within himself, but in Alex as well. A sense of solid confidence anchored David as he realized he had taken monumental steps toward reclaiming his legacy, not just for himself but for his son. They were not just father and son, but partners in the business of rewriting their history and sculpting a future defined by authenticity. Though shadows would always linger, the conversations they shared held the power to illuminate even the darkest of corners. They were now bound by their commitment to honesty, a bond forged not by the sins of the past, but by their fellowship in seeking clarity. As David sat face to face with Alex, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment wash over him. Here at last was the legacy he had yearned to create, a line of hope and resilience, unbroken by the weight of betrayal. The time had come for them to carve out their own identities. Together, they would not only navigate the complex web of family history but emerge transformed, proving that they were capable of conquering the burdens of their past. Now was the time to embrace a future that shimmered with promise. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories know the importance of uplifting the channel through these actions.